My material is based on 4 areas of research. And I love the term that Mihai picked around reimagining learning and development. This is an inflection point in our lives. This is a chance to see opportunities for what that future is.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us at the warm welcome for all of you. Reimagining Learning and Development Masterclass with Professor Dave Ulrich. Coffee is ready, water is ready, and I hope you have pen and paper ready, because the next 1 hour will be a massively crazy ride, I guarantee you, with brand new content and some really exciting ideas. And the reason why we are doing this exciting webinar masterclass on reimagining learning and development, because probably you all heard the story when a CFO asked the CEO, what happens if we invest in developing in our people and they leave? And of course, these days, many companies are tempted to cut cost on training and development. So the CEO this time, the smart CEO, responded, what happens if we don't and they stay? Because, ladies and gentlemen, the pandemic will be over. Yes, we're heading towards potentially an economic crisis, but guess what? That crisis will be over, and only people can lead through us crisis, and only people will be able to help organizations to bounce back and win at the marketplace. Richard Branson, legendary CEO, founder and chairman of the Virgin Group, said, clients don't come first, employees come first. Take care of your people, they will take care of your clients. So it is my hope, ladies and gentlemen, that many of you are in a very similar shoe as Sir Richard Branson. So you probably remember when you sign up for this masterclass, we asked you a couple of questions. One of the questions was, how has the current pandemic impacted your learning and development plans? Interestingly, out of 1,300 respondents, as you can see, 41% of you said, yes, it massively impacted and we have serious budget cuts. The good news is that 59% of you, close almost 60%, they did not cut budget. Most of you rethinking how to deliver training, how to upskill and reskill people. Many of you have no major change in plans. And some of you, interestingly and fortunately, have an opportunity to increase the training budget to make sure people are more skilled and better skilled. Another question we ask about, obviously, e-learning in your company, whether the current pandemic sort of expedited the adoption of digital learning. And as we can see, 33% of you had a very strong and solid e-learning, digital learning culture. And most of you, almost 60%, 57% of the participants, to be precise, currently started exploring e-learning, probably due to the current situation when we are fortunate to be work from home or required to be work from home. So now digital is here to stay. 10% of you have not started learning and exploring e-learning and digital learning. This might be an opportunity to start exploring further. And last but not least, the question I asked about what are the top 3 skills you consider priority when it's come to upskilling and reskilling your workforce. It was an open-ended question, so I throw all the answers in a word cloud, and here you go. Resilience, digital, leadership, management, change, innovation, agility. These are the big words jumping out from this word cloud. So it does require, the current pandemic does require us to find grit, be resilient, and be agile, be adaptable. Because one thing for sure, that there's a lot of things we don't know. We probably don't know more than we know, and we don't know how the situation will evolve, but we've got to ride the wave to get the best out of it. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce a masterclass leader, Professor Dave Ulrich, today, who probably requires no introduction. All of you know very well, the father of modern HR, Rensis Likert Professor of Management at the University of Michigan, partner at the RBL Group, the author of countless very influential books, and basically the one who is actually shaping a modern HR as we know today. So without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to pass the word and a virtual stage to Professor Dave Ulrich.
Mihai, thank you. I can't thank you enough for your generosity, your goodness of spirit, and your continued passion to learn. I think we've been partners now for 5 or 6 years, and every time I work with you, I learn. I'll go through a set of slides, and I'm going to leave this one up for a moment so that you can get the QR code if you want copies of these materials, and just do some introductory work. First of all, welcome to my office. I don't get to do that very often. I've had some of you on calls before and had a chance to meet you and to visit with you, at least virtually and hopefully in person at the HR Congress that may happen in November or other settings. Just a moment about me for those whom I've not met and my passion. I have a very real passion to learn. Learning is my agenda. It's what I want. It's what I'm passionate about. I hope it's my identity. What that means is I want to continually create 15 to 20 to 25% new material every 12 to 18 months. It's such a privilege to work with Mihai because he always pushes me to new material. He said, Dave, in the learning and development space, there's a lot of innovation going on. We did another session on HR changes. And I said, oh, there is. And he said, could you help put together some ideas about learning and development and what's new? And I said, I'd be delighted. So I spent a lot of time the last few weeks going through our research and trying to put together value. Because you'll see, for those who I've listened to, I almost always start with value. It's not about learning, it's about the value we create. And so I'd ask you to just do a very quick little self-assessment, 1 to 10. How much value does L&D add to my company? It's a very simple question. And then the question we're going to answer today over the next 45 minutes is, what could I do to add more value, either I personally or in L&D? Now, the other thing you should probably know about me is I always have too much material. So I apologize for that, and I don't. My material is based on 4 areas of research. And I love the term that Mihai picked around reimagining learning and development. This is an inflection point in our lives. This is a chance to see opportunities for what that future is. Now, the thing I'm drawing on is research on talent and people. We have 13 dimensions of talent. We've studied 450 companies around the world. What does talent need to have to succeed in learning as a piece? We studied leadership. We've done a lot of work on leadership and top companies for leadership with 500 companies in 3 rounds, leadership code, brand, the capital index, and 10 books to redefine leadership. We've studied organization with 1,200 companies about the capabilities to win. And we've studied human resources with thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people with data sets and books. I was on a call earlier this morning with some colleagues at our firm, rbl.net, and it's the same with Mihai. Our firm said, you know, in this coronavirus pandemic, in the aftermath, there's a lot of ambulance chasers. They're coming out with ideas. They're repackaging old ideas. And I said, what differentiates us, I hope, is that we're not repackaging and we're not ambulance chasers. We have theory, research, and experience that allow us to take that knowledge and reimagine learning and development. Now, with that in mind, that sounds arrogant. I don't mean to be arrogant, but I mean to say part of your job in L&D is to separate the real stuff from the repackaged stuff. I said I'm going to cover a lot. Let me put a. I'm going to consider myself today a waiter. You've not been able to eat in a restaurant almost anywhere in the world for the past 8 weeks. I am going to be a waiter of ideas and a menu of things. And this is the placemat if you're sitting at a restaurant. I've got one major idea that many of you, if you've heard me, have heard before. I've got 3 pathways in different colors or sets of issues, and then I've got 12 action items. And so I'm going to give you on one page a ton of data. And get ready. I hope you'll get the slides. I begin with that end. I hope you'll follow Mihai on LinkedIn and me on LinkedIn. But get ready. We're going to cover a lot of material, all of which is about this very simple question: what could I do in L&D, myself or our function, to add more value? So let's start with the very simple one idea. If you've heard me talk in the last 2 years, this is the premise. What's the most important thing that business or L&D can give an employee? I've done polls on this. What's the most important thing we can give an employee today? And Mihai talked about the budget cuts and the need for change and the skills that employees have to have. And often we do polls. I didn't do the polling question this time because the answers are almost always the same. Select one. What's the most important thing we can give through L&D and employ? A sense of belief, meaning, purpose, ambition, get-driven companies, an ability to become better, to learn and to grow, a sense of belonging, community, relationships, all the above or none of the above. I think we did this about 3 or 4 weeks ago, Mihai, and I think it was 80 to 90% check number 4, all of the above. And I think 2% check number 5. And I've had that in every group. And you're wrong. I think the most important thing we can give an employee is an organization that succeeds in the marketplace. I adore Richard Branson. I wish I had his vitality and energy. And he said, you've got to have good employees, but you've got to have good employees so that you win in the marketplace. If we have great employees, but we don't win in the marketplace, there is no workplace. And my disagreement with Richard Branson is a little bit is you got to manage both. You got to manage your people, your employees, and you got to manage your customer. But until and unless you win in that marketplace, there is no workplace. That's my dominant assumption. It's a premise that shapes how I think and how I act. We call that thinking from the outside in. L&D is not about learning. It's about helping your business succeed in the marketplace. So a quick example. I have the privilege of teaching at the University of Michigan. And our Advanced Human Resource Executive Program, people invest heavily to come for 2 weeks. We always start, what is it you want out of this program? I want to build a better learning management system. I want to do better at executive comp. I want to do better at changing culture. I want to do better at some other OD change agenda. And when I have them write that down on a flip chart, I'm old, I say, go stand by your sheet. Put behind whatever you wrote so that. I want to do a better job in L&D, not to build learning, but it's so that we succeed in the marketplace. I want to do a better job with culture so that we win in the marketplace. Last November, one of my favorite sessions at the November HR Congress that we held was a session on culture. That culture is not about a description of who we are, but it's a prescription of who we should become in the marketplace. That's my assumption. That's my headline, and that's the premise. Now, there's 3 pathways to get there. I've got to change the way I think. I've got to change my assumptions. We have mindsets. We have ways of think, and I'm going to give you 3 assumptions that will change. I've got to look at best practice, and Mihai in our introduction said it's not best practice, it's next practice. What are some of the innovations that are going on? And then I've got to look at concrete ways that I can improve. So I've got 3 columns or 3 pathways around assumptions, trends, and improvements that will help us create value through the work that we do. And again, I'm going to cover a lot. So let's start with the first assumption. L&D is not about learning, but value created for others. Value assumption is not what I do, it's what somebody gets because of what I do. The logic in L&D on the right is very simple. We're going to build an L&D course. Oh, what are we going to teach about leadership? What are we going to teach about strategy? What are we going to teach? In fact, with many of you in L&D, if we do coursework, we say, here's the template for the week, 5 days, morning, afternoon. What are we going to do each day? We're going to do strategy on day 1, finance on day 2, marketing on day 3, organization on day 4. There's our flow. You know, I've done that for decades, and it's not the place to start. Where you've got to start and your assumption is not what we teach, but what value will it create for someone else. So when I have that 5-day template in front of me, if it's training, I begin to say, who's going to be impacted by this training? What is it they need to do their work better? How do I now begin to weave together content and ideas that will help them? The best learning, either in training or experience. I've got a business leader. She needs to become more effective, or he needs to become more effective. What is it they need to do better? What's the outcome they need? What do they want? What do they need? And then I in L&D build the setting and the skills to deliver it. Now that premise, values defined by the receiver more than the giver, the little picture shows that simple. Those of us in HR or L&D often start in cell 1. Here's what we want to deliver a great training program. Here's what you should go do. That doesn't work. It doesn't work at work. It doesn't work at home. When I give my wife of 44 years a gift, I don't start with what I want to give her. I tried that. I've shared this before. Early in our marriage, I would give her tickets to sporting events. So I sell one. Here's what I want. We should go to a sporting event together. Here's what you should do for your birthday. Come with me to my sporting event. She looked at me and smiled and said, Dave, enjoy yourself. I got to start with what she wants. What's meaningful to her? So I'll confess, and I haven't shown this before. I can't see myself on the screen, so I hope you can see this. The last gift I got my wife was a pillow. And you may not be able to see it, but it's a pillow. And my wife is an exceptional psychologist and studies learning and psychology. And it's a quote from Carol Dweck, I'm not failing, I'm learning. So that's the gift I gave my wife at our last gift giving event. And I focus on what she wants and what's important for her. Principle 2, if I'm going to start with the receiver, I have to ask myself, who are our customers? Who are our stakeholders for L&D and for HR overall? So I'd ask you, if I were with you, I'd say, just take 5 seconds. Who are the stakeholders? Who are the key customers of L&D? Who do we serve that we give value to? As I've done that question over the years, generally our answers are below the line. We in L&D serve our employees and we serve our managers. We serve those inside the boundaries of the company. I'd like to suggest we think above the line. The customers or the stakeholders of our L&D investments are also the customers of the company. Are we developing our leaders and our employees and our workforce so that our customers will have a better experience with us? One of the things we propose, and it's fascinating, is to go to advertising agencies that create brand and to say, you're going to spend 10 million euros on this brand campaign, either online, through virtual online, through print, through social media, through television. Add 5%, add $500,000. Use that $500,000 to take that external brand identity that you, the ad agency, are creating and create an internal leadership development agenda. And the messaging to the customers through the brand exercise should be the same as the skills and tools we're building for our leaders inside. What a great idea. That 5% will shift so that our leaders serve our customers and our development. Our investors, we found in our work called Leadership Capital Index that investors have 20 to 25% of their investment based on their confidence in management and leaders. Our communities, our partners. I believe strongly that our customers outside are as important as those inside. Now comes the third piece. And this is one I've struggled with the last 3 weeks. The assumption is that we've got to change value. We've got to shift our mindset from the receiver to the receiver more than the giver. So it's not what I train, it's what people will get too. We've got to change our assumption. I'm not here to train employees and leaders. I'm here to do training so that customers, investors, and communities win. I've got to change my assumption about digital. And when I got into the e-learning, it was fascinating that 90% in Mihai's pre-study are moving to e-learning. Actually, in the pre-study, the part I was most interested in, I should confess, and Mihai, we do this anonymously, but 2% of the respondents were increasing their learning budget. What I really want to know is who those 2% are so that we can go get a job there and we can find those 2% companies. Amazing. This is a tough time. Everybody right now is enamored with technology, whatever you want to call it, technology-enabled e-learning, virtual learning, working from home. What's going on there to change our assumptions? And the coronavirus just pushes that. These are headlines I've seen. Working from home is the new normal. I think that's ludicrous, to be honest. I think we're going to have an ecosystem of where we work. Some will be from home. It always has been. I've worked from home. Welcome to my office. Mihai's worked from home. Many have. I think it's not a new normal. It's a piece of a new normal. We're going to navigate new ways of working, new ways of doing things. But here's the assumption we've got to change. And again, I'm frustrated with this a little bit because, as I said to Mihai before we started, we could spend an hour on the tips for technology-enabled learning. But here's the assumption. It's not just the platform or the tool. I'm doing e-learning. I'm doing a class online. What's happened is many of those ideas have had low impact. You've probably seen it. MOOCs, 3 to 5 years ago, massive open online courses. It was a new thing. Everybody's going to get a degree from a top university in Europe, in Asia, in the United States, 3% to 5% completion rates. We go listen to a TED Talk, and they're wonderful. They have ideas, but they may not have impact. We go on social media. I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit, and I try to count, and I try to not get decepted by how many people viewed my post. And a lot of repackaging is going on. And we're facing some online fatigue. There's a reference to an article recently in Fast Company. The mindset we've got to change is it's not just about the idea that we distribute through technology, it's the impact. What can we do to make whatever technology-based learning we offer have real impact? I've got a partnership with CorpU, and I've got a reference there as you get copies of the slides. Alan Todd and others are doing great. They've given us 5 or 6 things to think about as we change our assumption. We start with what do we want? Remember, the goal of learning is not learning, it's who's the customer. What value are we going to create for them? We've got to share ideas that will have impact. It will be a pull, not a push. We'll allow people to use knowledge as they need it. We've got to institutionalize it. The e-learning event is not isolated. It's integrated into our other HR and other management practices. We've got to sustain the ideas. We've got to be self-paced. We've got to make sure they last so that learning is not an event. And I hope this webinar is the beginning of a conversation with Hexa as you look at their services. And I encourage you to look at their handouts. And then there's design principles of how we go about doing some of that online learning. And I just hit 4 or 5 that CorpU and Alan Todd have talked about. We personalize it. I try to be personal. I welcome you to my office. We try to make it real. One of my friends who's doing e-learning said, show me in your office something personal about you. What can I show in my office that's personal? I sometimes I'll show some in a minute. We've got to practice. It's got to be blended learning. It's got to be integrated with both online and in person and follow-up and accountability. Whoa. So I start with 3 assumptions. And let me go back to the message, and I'm going to do a poll, Mihai, in just about 30 seconds. The mega message number 1 is that L&D is not about learning, but helping my business succeed in the marketplace. I've got 3 assumptions, and I'm going to do my first poll here. Values defined by the receiver. Learning is less about what we teach or help people learn, and it's more about what is learned and how it works. 2, I've got to serve all my stakeholders, employees inside, customers, and investors outside. And 3, I've got to improve impact, not just activity, but impact through technology enabled. So I'd like to ask the first polling question, Mihai, if we can put it up. Which of these 3 is the assumption most important for you? Which of these 3 is the assumption most important for you?
And I'm launching the polls, ladies and gentlemen. So recognize that the value is defined by the receiver more than the giver. Serve all stakeholders, customers, investors, employees, improve impact through technology-enabled learning. So do please make your vote, and the answers are coming in. We wait for another 10 seconds or so.
And I will share. Can you see me while this poll's going on, Mihai? Can you see me or not?
No, we're seeing actually the poll questions now. Everybody's seeing the poll questions.
That's fine. So, Mihai, at a personal level, when you look around where you're sitting, what is something, and just describe it to us, personal about you? What is something personal about you?
Well, right in front of me, my little one, 6-year-old, was playing here with the Playmobil tool. So I actually have a set of Playmobil dolls with some plastic horses, and we were playing actually right before the webinar. So that's very personal. So cool. In front, I'm wearing a shirt and I look very professional, but in my room, it's actually a beauty of homeschooling and a home kindergarten. So I'm closing the poll, and the poll is closed. So let me share back the result with everybody, and you see that 47% of respondents said recognize the values defined by the receiver more than the giver. 38% serve all stakeholders, customers, investors, employees, and 16% responded voted improve impact through technology-enabled learning.
Thank you. I am a little surprised. That's the first time I've done that poll. And I think that mindset about creating value by the receiver is so critical. It's not what we do, it's what somebody gets from what we do. And then the stakeholders have to be outside. I'm actually surprised at the 16% on technology. There's so much attention on the latest and greatest technology. One of the people in our field has done a great job. There's 2,700 new technology apps in HR. But when I listen to some of that work, it's not creating value for others. It's technology for technology. It's not serving customers. What I love about Mihai's employee experience course that he introduced is that it's employee experience so that we get customer experience. Really fun. Okay, I've done the assumptions and I got to keep moving here. My second column is trends. There are hundreds of trends in learning and development. I went through a bunch of books and ideas. I'm going to highlight 4. The first is, what do we learn? And I really appreciated Mihai's outcomes, skills of learning, where he did the word cloud in a heart and talked about digital, etc. I think there's 3 outcomes of the learning efforts we create. And those learning efforts are of all types, both in person, online, by individual, etc. I'll talk about that. One outcome is about talent, upskilling. A second outcome is about culture. And a third outcome is about leadership, which is the intersection of those two. So what I'd like to do is just take you quickly through what are some of the trends in each of those 3. This is still number 4, kind of what's next in this space. Upskilling is the new word. The half-life of knowledge is changing. When is 50% of what I know out of date? For me, it's so fascinating. In the last 8 weeks, since that coronavirus hit, I probably now have 25 to 30% new material. And that's my passion to learn. I think that half-life and upskilling is not only the actions we take. I'll start there. What choices do I make? What are my routines? How do I deal with uncertainty? How do I anticipate the future? Those are my skills, my actions that I've got to upskill my people on. But I think on the left-hand side, from great work by Bob Eichinger, who's one of the architects and iconic figures, he says we not only got to upskill our talent around actions, behaviors, skills, demeanor, competencies, but also around unconscious biases, embedded assumptions. And Bob talks about creating a beginner's mindset, seeing things that are fresh and new, creating a growth mindset, The Pillow by Carol Dweck, building mindfulness, getting agency over our brain's powers and emotions. So one of the trends is we've got to upskill our talent, both how we think and how we act. A second trend is on what's learned is we've got to get better leadership. And I really love the heart that Mihai showed, because when you look at that heart, it's not the technical skills. In fact, it's not learning the technology of digital, it's managing it. We looked at the World Economic Forum and we looked at what are some of the categories of those soft skills: goal setting, relationships, information, adaptability. Those are the soft skills that come out. Then we found in our leadership work, and I hope you've seen us do some of that, the importance and criticality of paradox. How do we do goal setting to plan and deliver? How do we build relationships with ourselves and with others? How do we manage information, both to listen and understand and to hear and to communicate? How do we manage agility to have stability as well as change? That template is one I hope your company is doing about what we give leaders. And the third outcome we create in terms of what is learned is culture. Our research shows that culture and organization has 4 times the impact on business results. Here's my strong encouragement with you. As we look at creating through learning and development the culture, don't just talk about our values. That's useful. Don't just talk about our climate and the perceptions of our work systems or our patterns and norms of how we do things around here. Go to that 4th wave. Talk about the right culture. And in learning, make sure that as we try to embed learning, that we try to make learning part of that culture. The visual, and again, this is a lot of information on this 4th trend. Culture starts with the purpose, our mission, our vision. It often goes to the left, our values, our beliefs, who we are, what we believe. And we talk about culture as the roots of the tree and our behaviors. I love to go to the right. Begin the dialogue of culture around brand. What is it we promise our customers? That external identity becomes the internal agenda. And then culture is not the roots, but it's the leaves and the fruits of the tree. I just covered a lot of stuff. Let me go back and highlight what I just wanted to cover. The fourth bullet, the emerging trend, bullet number 4, when I do learning and development, what's the innovation? What is learned is so critical. And what we should learn about is talent, leadership, and culture. In the talent space, it's upskilling, both how we think and how we hack. In the leadership space, it's soft skills and managing paradoxes around these categories. And in the organization space, what we need to learn about that will create value is the right culture, starting from the outside in. Number 5, where does learning occur? There's a common definition in our field called 70-20-10. This was done by the Center for Creative Leadership, Bob Eichinger, whom I quoted, Morgan McCall, and other really thoughtful people a number of years ago interviewed people, and they said, where did you learn the most? 70% was on the job. 20% was a related job, my coaching, my mentoring, and 10% was training. You know, it's fascinating that 70-20-10 has become a standard, and there have been books written about it. I believe in this world, as we look at the next generation of learning, it's going to be 50% on the job. I think it's still the dominant factor. I don't think it's 70, but a job assignment, a project, one-on-one coaching, and I put coaching in that. Most of what we learn by what we do. I move education and training from 30% or 10% to 30, because I think what we're finding in training, and Hexa is doing a great job with this through digital, is that it's not tourist training. You're not a tourist who visits Budapest and sees the castle on the hill and takes pictures, or takes a cruise and takes pictures and goes home. It's guest training. And we treat those who come as if they're guests. We focus on learning solutions. You'll see me talk about this. Teams. Education done differently has impact. And then 20% of our learning is being thoughtful about our experiences outside of work. Mihai has a 6-year-old. Right now, Mihai, if you were to say something personal, our daughter, who has 2 children, 8 and 7, called last night or 2 days ago, and she said, Mom and Dad, our children need a sleepover. They were going to come to your house and do a sleepover. By the way, that was a very clever way of saying, I need to get away from my children. We've been together for 8 weeks, 24 hours a day, doing homeschooling. So we now have an 8 and a 7-year-old who are now with my wife in the other room, trying to manage some of their life. I learn a lot from our children. Mihai, when your children are teenagers, you're going to learn so much about performance review and communication, because you're going to find that it's the relationship that matters more than the appraisal process. Where does learning occur? Am I looking at learning not only on the job and so serious about assignments and projects, education done differently, and I'll talk more about that, but helping people learn from the external experiences. Number 6, one of the cool innovations in the learning space is this innovation about who teaches and who attends. Let me start with the who teaches or who attends. Generally, in that model, we start at the bottom left. An individual attends. And so I come as an individual to a learning experience. I mentioned on the previous slide, I'll mention it again, teams attend. I don't just come as an individual, I come with a team, maybe 2 levels, a boss with her, his subordinates. But it's a team of us on a project, on an agenda. Number 3, moving up, the who attends, a customer attends. We are finding that some of the leading firms that's next in learning, 10 to 15% of the spaces are dedicated to customers or suppliers on either side of that value chain. We go to our customer and we say, we're doing a program on strategy and how do you differentiate in a changing market? We know that's an issue for you. Would you be interested in attending? A bank put in place a remarkable experience with customers. They said, we as a bank invest money in small, medium enterprises so that they'll grow. We've decided that for many of those small, medium enterprises with anywhere from 20 to 400 employees, if you're going to successfully use our investment, the money we put in, you've got to have a better strategy, a marketing position, a technology, and organization human resource skills. So we, the bank, are putting together a quarterly 2-day workshop where you, the customer who we've given money to, can bring your team. And in the first quarter, we're going to do 2 days on strategy and marketing. In the second quarter, 2 days on finance. In the third quarter, 2 days on technology and systems. And in the fourth quarter, 2 days on organization and HR. We're now going to give you and your team the skills that we've learned that will help you do better with the money we've given you. HR designed that customer-focused training. And what was so cool about that is they also use that for high potentials. So we go to the strategy marketing people and say, do you have 3 or 4 of your high potentials who could put together a 2-day workshop for our customers and help them learn what's going on? Investor. The emerging model will be do the same thing with some of your investors, either the analysts who recommend and follow your industry or the actual investors who put money into your firm. When I look at that, I then say that's who attends, who can facilitate. Obviously, column 1 is self, technology. I talked briefly about that. Column 2 is a faculty presenter, me, an expert. Column 3 is line manager, and managers teaching managers makes a difference. And column 4 is the customer or the investor. Now, here's the exercise that I encourage you to think about. When I look at our development experiences today, which of those cells do we do? Let me tell you what most of them are. Cell 14. Individuals come, an expert presents. Maybe we've moved into cell 13 and we're now doing more online. 91% are doing more. Maybe we've dabbled in cell 15. I'm going to encourage you to begin to dabble in all 16 cells. That's kind of strange. Some of them may not have much. Cell 1, I want my investors to be access to my e-learning. That's not hard. So when we create an e-learning system with Hexen, one of those courses about resilience for HR or employee experience, I'm going to share that with those who have either loan or equity in my company. I'm going to share that in cell 5 with my customers. Very clever. When we have faculty, I'm going to invite customers to come in. I'm going to manage all 16 of those cells. Number 7, and this is such a critical trend. How do we transfer learning? Because one of the problems is learning becomes an isolated event. It doesn't change behavior. Oh, that was really nice to hear that TED Talk. That was nice to go to that MOOC. But it doesn't change anything. We're finding as we design learning experiences, there's 5 levels, each having more impact. We can do a presentation. I'm trying to do that here. We can do case studies. My frustration with case studies is we learn a lot about companies we don't care much about. So if I go to a class, I learn a lot about a case. We can do facilitated discussion, which I love to do. We can do action learning. Here's a set of tools. How does it apply? Where we're moving next in learning is what's called learning solution. Let me show you the terms and I'll give an example of this. Learning solutions is different from action learning. The starting point, and when we teach courses at the University of Michigan, for example, I teach a case on change as part of our 2-week program or on talent. I love to start by saying, what's a change problem you're facing in your company today? If we have 30 people in the course, they say, oh, I'm struggling to implement an appraisal system or a learning management system. I'm struggling how to get my line managers more committed. We start by presenting that as a problem. And what I then say is, how are we going to work in this course over the next 2 hours on talent or learning or change to solve your problem? So it's a discussion. I don't present the theory, I present the problem. One of the courses we do is called an HR learning partnership, where we have teams come. I love teaching talent. Each team, and we have 6 companies in the group usually, says, here's our biggest talent problem. Then I sit in front of the room, 30 other people in the room, and we spend 10 to 15 minutes coaching them on that problem. The focus is not here's the tools, it's understanding. The role of faculty is not to present, it's to listen and to solve. The participant is not just to apply the tools, it's to define the problem. The ending point is not that I've learned a set of tools, it's that I can solve problems and resolve it. That learning solution approach is a new way to manage training and to transfer learning. The other key to transferring learning, and I've got two keys here, is learning sustainability. My colleague Norm Smallwood and I did a book called Learning Leadership Sustainability. This was one of our favorite first paragraphs. A group of turkeys attend a 2-day training program to learn how to fly. They learn the principles of aerodynamics. They practice flying morning, afternoon, and evening. They fly with the wind, against the wind, over mountains and plains. At the end of the 2 days, they all walk home. I hope in any learning or development experience, you have an action plan. We discovered in our leadership sustainability work that there are 7 dimensions of a successful action plan. I won't take you through those. I am now going to have you catch your breath while Mihai puts up the next poll. I've just said, here are 4 learning trends. And so I'm going to keep those numbers, 4, 5, 6, and 7, as we put up the poll. Which of those trends will need the most attention in your company? Number 4 of our 12, what is learned, talent, leadership, and organization? And I could have separated those. Number 5, where we learn. Number 6, who attend and who teaches. And number 7, how to transfer learning through learning solutions and sustainability. So Mihai, if we could put up the poll, let's see how we get votes.
Absolutely, Dave. I'm launching the poll as we speak. What emerging trends, innovation needs the most attention? So please select one. What is learned, where learning occurs, who attends and who teaches, and last but not least, how to transfer learning in work settings. So please do make your vote. And by the way, Dave, should we have some time for some questions? We have
Why
really
don't you take them right now? What are some questions while people fill it in?
One of the question, Charles Henry, nice to have you online, by the way. A question is, what do you think of the 21st century competencies discussed in 2 recent books in French? And that's basically the 21st century competencies, the 4 C's: creativity, critical thinking, communication, and cooperation, their relevancy to the post-COVID crisis situation.
They're terrific. I mean, go through those 4 C's and look at the things that the World Economic Forum listed. Many companies are creating competence models, and they're all about the soft skills. My only push would be each of those 4 C's is a paradox. I've got to have creativity, and I've also got to have discipline. I've got to have collaboration, and I've also got to have individual contribution. So I'd encourage you to look at those 4 C's and put them in terms of a paradox and being able to navigate each of them.
Brilliant. And one more question, if we still have a bit of a time.
Absolutely.
So Terry Fabriani is asking a question on the second point. They've said that one of the important points, L&D, is serving stakeholders. There are many categories of stakeholders. How do we know which portion is more important than all of these stakeholders? So how do we know the?
Actually, it's a great question. We did some research about where should leaders spend time across. We had 5 stakeholders: employee, business, inside, customer, investor, and community outside. And there's many more. There's government agencies, there's community groups, there's suppliers, but we had those 5. The firms that had the best success were about 20-20-20-20. They navigated the balance across those 5 stakeholders. So, and I guess if I were to say, do I give more energy to one or the other, is where am I in my business cycle? I've just created a new product. I've got to focus maybe more on customers. I'm just changing my strategy. I've got to focus on individual skills to make it happen. But what we found is the most successful firms in our research were 20-20-20-20. What we also find is most HR people and learning and development people, where do they actually focus their time? It's about 80% inside the company, about 40% with employees and 40% with leaders, and only about 20% on the stakeholders outside.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dave. And now I'm sharing the result. I'll close the poll in the meantime and sharing the result with everybody else. So what emerging trends, innovations need most attention? 77% of respondents said how to transfer learning to work setting.
Wow.
10% where learning occurs, 50, 30, 20. 9% what is learned, talent leadership organization. And 5% who attends and who teaches.
That is so amazing. By the way, this is a great data set with over 700 people. I would have thought it would have been number 4, what is learned, but it's number 7. How do I transfer learning? I beg of you to look at Hexa with Mihai and look at our side at RBL. That learning solutions idea is so critical, and leadership and learning sustainability, 77%. It would be great to do an entire session on that. Now let me go to my third column, and I'm going to do these pretty quickly for sake of time. This is the first time I've done this session. As Mihai says, we got to model learning, and I'm trying to model it. What are some improvements? Number 8, create a better learning experience. Experience is the buzzword du jour. And now you just know that I don't speak French very well. But in each step of learning, experience is a very simple idea in some ways. It's like the user experience. How easy is it to navigate the Zoom or the GoToWebinar experience? How easy is it to buy food in a store, to order at a restaurant? That experience that makes it easy should occur in each of those stages of learning. How we personalize learning, how we attend to the process. All of those experience pieces should be managed so the employee has a positive experience, either in online learning, job experience, or at home. Number 9, we got to measure learning. I feel so strongly about this. I did a book a number of years ago. I have it somewhere on my shelf called The HR Scorecard with Mark Huslet and Brian Becker. Today, I would probably throw the book away. We are not measuring learning by activity. Scorecards, dashboards. We're not even measuring it by insights. What did you learn? We're not even measuring it by intervention. We're trying to measure learning by impact. And I know this is the Gottman scale, but it's not just, did I change? It's what was the impact on my customers, on my investors, on my employees? And the learning metrics need to shift from scorecards to insights, to interventions, to impact. Number 10, who plays what role in learning? I think this is so critical. When I taught an MBA class, one of my favorite final exam multiple choice questions was, who has primary accountability and responsibility for the HR issues within a company? Who has primary accountability and responsibility for HR issues in a company around talent, leadership, and organization? A, the business leader, line manager. B, the head of HR. C, it's shared. D, the consultant. E, I don't care, I'm going into finance. Great question. Who has primary accountability? Line manager, HR, shared. I don't care, the consultant. 77, 80% wrote C. It's shared, and I marked it wrong. I think the primary accountability for learning outcomes is the line manager. I call them the owners. They're engaged. They make the decision. They have accountability. They put their time and energy into it, not just saying, welcome to learning, I'm now going to go back to work. What's the metaphor? This isn't work. Learning is work. HR professionals are the architects. We in learning and development professionals, we create frameworks. We're the coaches. We take what's learned and we move it to the next step. And coaching is such a key part of ongoing success. We design and deliver the values. We facilitate. But ultimately, the person accountable for learning outcomes is each employee. I love the little chart. We don't want to be managed by an employee. We have to be an agent to ourselves. We should act and not be acted upon. And our job, working with our business leaders and learning and development leaders, is to help employees become personally accountable. In this coronavirus, we're being pushed as employees to whole new places. And instead of being dependent on managers or on learning professionals to make my world better, I need to help them become accountable. Number 11 of my 12, do we have the skills to succeed? Now, we have studied, and I hope some of you have seen, the skills and competencies of HR professionals over 30 years. We're not just interested in the skills that you have, but the extent to which those skills create value for others. And so one of the things we found in our last HR competence model, in the middle of this circle, were 3 critical skills that were critical for HR to be successful. One was credible activist, and I think it's true in learning. Am I credible? Do people trust me? Am I activist? Do I have a point of view? The other was strategic positioner. Can I link what I do in HR or in learning to the business goals, both inside and outside the company? And in the middle, in black, was paradox navigator. Can I, in learning, navigate the inherent paradoxes? And we talked about those with the leadership soft skills. The 4 C's. I love the 4 C idea, but they're not that simple. Each of those 4 C's has a paradox. So what does that mean? Let me suggest that as a learning and development expert, it's not just the competence I develop, but its impact. And so this chart is a little bit tricky. We said there are outcomes of HR or learning and development competencies. And so we tested in each of the columns, and I should have labeled these, personal effectiveness. What causes me in L&D to be more effective? What do I have to do to be more personally effective? These are the 9 skills that are the 9 rows: credible, activist, strategic, positioner. Notice, for me to be seen as more personally effective on a scale of 0 to 100, how effective is this individual? Being a credible activist matters most, 19% of the 100 points. For me to add value to my stakeholders outside, the external customer, the investor, the most critical row in yellow is strategic positioner. For me to help my business succeed and make money, the most critical skill is paradox navigator. Now, why do I go through that? Learning and development is not just about the skills you have, but it's the extent to which those skills will deliver outcomes people care about. These are some of the skills that we see merging, and just for sake of time, I won't spend much time on it. I've gone a long time. I'll just highlight, we've got to do this set of new skills. Now, my last piece, we've got to have guidance. Guidance. We've got to figure out, where should I focus my learning and development effort? I just did guidance with HR and learning skills. If I want to be more personally effective, I've got to be a credible activist. In the learning space, this is the guidance work we should do. I listed 9 targeted learning and development activities that I've talked about. Learn on the job, learn from education, involve customers. Don't stop as a learning professional with how well we do it. What will their relative impact be on employees, organization, customers, and investors? And the same way we look at the HR skills and learning skills and their impact on personal stakeholders, as I develop my learning agenda and prioritize, target those L&D activities, not just at how well we do it, but their relative impact. Whoa. I'm going to do one more poll, and then I'm going to take questions. And while we're doing the poll, I'm going to rack up. So here's my last poll, Mihai, if you could post it. What learning improvements need the most attention in my company?
I'm launching the poll, ladies and gentlemen. Create experience in learning, measure learning, shared ownership, self-line manager in HR, competencies for L&D, create learning guidance system. And I think it worked quite well. So while we're waiting for the responses, I think I can ask a few questions.
Great idea.
Give some good feedback to the audience. One interesting question. I'm just browsing through because there are so many. From Dana Cruciere Leon is that, what will be the signals that I am a good in navigating the paradox?
The signal is that I can have disagreement without being disagreeable. That you and I can have a disagreement about something, but we don't have an argument about it. I've been married for 44 years. My wife and I can disagree, but we're not disagreeable. That I can handle tension without having contention. What's the other signal? Is that because of paradox and duality that Paul Evans talks about, I can have a more fully divergent discussion. We can look at 2 or 3 different sides of the same issue.
Thank you. And now I'm closing the poll and I'm sharing back the results with everybody. So what learning improvement needs the most attention? 37% of respondents said shared ownership, self, line manager and HR. 24% measure learning. 17% create experience in learning. 15% create learning guidance system. And last but not least, 7% competencies in L&D.
That is so fascinating. By the way, the 7% competencies for L&D, maybe we all believe we are completely and totally competent already because we've taken Hexa courses and we're ready to go. I started with a simple question. How much value does L&D add to my company? I now hope as you look across this webinar, you've got some ideas around your assumptions. And let me tell you what I've learned from this last 45 minutes or an hour. The biggest insight is we've got to show value created for someone else. The receiver is more important than the giver. I've also learned that 77% said we have to focus on transferring learning. I thought more would be about virtual. That's so huge. And then the other one is we each have in our company the area that we should focus on. Business ownership, critical area, we could talk about it. Measuring results, guidance system. Wherever you are, and I said, I am the menu. Oops, I don't have it here. I should have put it back in. I have a menu, one major message. Learning is not about learning, but creating value. 3 streams to get the message and 12 activities. I hope you'll pick whichever one works for you. I love to end my sessions by a rhetorical question in my answer. I often say to people, what was the best year in your life? And people say, the year I got married, the year I was in school. Some have said, the year I was drunk because I don't remember it. No, that's a bad joke. That's not true. I have a different answer. What was the best year of your life? And the answer for me is always the next one, the next one. If we in L&D believe in learning, I hope the best is yet ahead. And the best year of our life is always that which is next. I hope as a waiter, you've gotten a couple of ideas. One major idea, 3 streams of activity, the assumptions, the trends, the improvements, and 12 tools or things that you can do to help you go forward. Mihai, I always love working with you. And I warn people I'm covering a lot of things. I learned some things, and I hope others did as well that they can use.